My name is Tiffany Oliphant, and I'm the Communications Manager for WCRC. Hold on while I let a few more people into the meeting. Best, Director of Municipal Services for Pittsfield Township. The meeting audio and video are being recorded. We can provide you with a link of this recording at your request. After the presentation, you will be asked to virtually raise your hand during our Q&A session. I will provide instructions at the time on how to do this from either your computer and the Zoom app or your touch-tone phone. The chat feature for this meeting is turned on. If you have a question during the presentation, feel free to ask it in the chat and we will address it during the Q&A period. You can find the chat window at the bottom of your screen. This meeting is scheduled to go for an hour. Now I'll turn it over to Matt McDonald.
Good afternoon. My name is Matt McDonald. I'm the Director of Engineering here at the Road Commission. Thank you all for joining us. Just go over the brief agenda we have. I'm going to talk about jurisdictional responsibilities, speed limits, truck traffic, noise, pedestrian safety, and then we'll have a question and answer period. Slide. Here's the area of concern. We have Ann Arbor-Saline Road, which runs northeast and southwest, with the Bella Vista community on the east or south side of the road. Next slide. Michigan is unique in that we have several entities involved when making land use decisions and permitting responsibilities. Pittsfield Township ultimately makes the land use decisions. They have a very robust site plan approval process that has public engagement at both, I believe, the Planning Commission and the Township Board level as well. And the Road Commission, as I mentioned, is a regulatory agency. We're responsible for maintaining the roads and the permitting process to evaluate the impacts on those roads based on land use changes. How we do that is we look at what's called a traffic impact study, which looks at the proposed land use change, what type of traffic it's going to generate, and then evaluates how that's going to impact the existing infrastructure. In the case of Bella Vista community, there was a traffic impact study, and ultimately there was a left turn lane that was warranted and constructed as part of the development of this community. Next slide, please. So speed limits was a topic we've heard about and feedback from, and we wanted to kind of talk about that. One of the things we will discuss is the unposted prima facie, which ultimately, if a road in Michigan is not posted, if there's not a speed limit sign, then it is prima facie, which means drivers are to operate in a safe and reasonable manner with a maximum speed of 55 miles an hour. And typically that's on our primary network, like Ann Arbor-Saline Road. But if you're in a local subdivision within the subdivision community, the prima facie is typically 25 miles an hour within the community or in a business district on local roads. You can modify speed limits with a traffic control order, and that modification sets the speed anywhere between 25 and 55, depending on the 85th percentile. And what we are going to do is go to a short YouTube video from the Michigan State Police, which ultimately has the jurisdiction on speed limits in setting them, and so we'll watch that real quick. Tiffany?
Do you know how they set speed limits?
I have no idea.
I think it's a big mystery.
I I think that lower speed limit is safer.
Setting realistic speed limits is a safety concern for the Michigan State Police, the Department of Transportation, and other safety partners.
I think it's based on the area, the road.
I guess it depends on the flow of traffic.
Speed limits should be based on speed studies that measure normal driver behavior. In other words, the speed that the majority of motorists are comfortable driving.
I actually kind of like that rule.
Oh, no, I didn't know that.
If a speed limit is set artificially low, it can be unsafe. For example, it can cause drivers to slow unexpectedly, endangering drivers that are following behind.
I think people are going to drive as fast as they want to drive.
When set properly, speed limits improve safety. In some cases, after careful analysis, raising the speed limit is the safest thing to do.
For more information on speed limits, go to michigan.gov/speed limits.
Thank you, Tiffany. In the case of Ann Arbor-Saline Road, we do have a traffic control order, and that sets the speed for Ann Arbor-Saline Road from the city of Saline limits to Wagner Road at 50 miles an hour. The piece between Wagner Road and Oak Valley Drive is an unposted prima facie 55. And then from Oak Valley Drive to I-94, it is posted at 45 miles an hour with a traffic control order. The Road Commission does do traffic counts on the primary system on a very frequent basis, every other year or so. And what that does is it collects data on the volume of traffic, the type of traffic, and then it also gives us information on what the 85th percentile speed is. And back in 2022, this 85th percentile for the segment between Wagner Road and Oak Valley Drive was 53 miles an hour. Next slide.
So one of the things that Matt Best, Director of Municipal Services here at Pittsfield Township, and with me is Supervisor Graywall. One thing that the township would like to let the residents know is that on the speed limit issue, the township is going to be requesting that Washtenaw County Road Commission do a review of that section of Ann Arbor-Saline Road to see what the speed counts are today, and whether or not a reduction in speed is necessary. So we're going to be working with Washtenaw County Road Commission to do just that.
Yeah, we are happy to do that. And then again, ultimately, the Michigan State Police will perform the speed study, which would then dictate what the speed limit is set at, whether it remains unposted or whether a traffic controller would be revised for that section. Next slide, please. So Ann Arbor-Saline Road is depicted on the map here. You can see the freeways in red. Ann Arbor-Saline is a blue. This is a snippet from our Washtenaw County Road Commission truck operators map. It shows Ann Arbor-Saline as a designated truck route, and it's part of a network that ultimately gets cars and commercial traffic to the interstate. Ann Arbor-Saline Road west of Maple Road does have what we call a haul route permit. And what that is ultimately Ann Arbor-Saline Road is a part of a haul route from Maple all the way down to Pleasant Lake because we do have some gravel pits on Pleasant Lake Road. Next slide, please. So we have two gravel pits that operate on Pleasant Lake Road. They have invested into the haul route to have an appropriate pavement section to carry that traffic from basically the pit entrance all the way up through the intersection at Ann Arbor-Saline, all the way to Maple Road, and then you get on the designated truck route. This haul route has been in place since the 1980s. And unfortunately, there's no alternative route that can support this heavy loading from the gravel pits. Next slide, please. We have heard from residents regarding noise issues from the trucking, and certainly we can work with the township to post signs. My understanding with talking with Matt Best, that the township ordinance does address engine braking prohibited, and so certainly we will work with the township to install signs such as what you see here, where per township ordinance, and again, this is that area where we've got multiple jurisdictions. Ultimately, we don't have, as a road commission, any jurisdictional authority on noise, but the townships has an ordinance in place, and we are happy to work with them to get these signs posted on this segment of Ann Arbor-Saline Road. Any other comments from that, Mr. Best?
Just that we're, with the placement of the signs, we'll be able to, once we figure out where the signs will go, we'll be getting a permit from Washtenaw County Roads and placing them per the rules. So it's something that we will do for this, working with Washtenaw County.
And we'll also make sure that the Department of Public Safety is informed so that it's not just for, putting up there for a visual cue. We'll make sure that we follow through on our end to make sure that the trucks are aware of this change and abide by it.
Outstanding, thank you. Next slide. So at the intersection, you can see you've got pedestrian facilities on both sides of Ann Arbor-Saline Road. And certainly there was some discussion and feedback we've heard from residents about needing a safe crossing. We have worked with Pittsfield Township in the past to provide crossings of primary roads like Ann Arbor-Saline Road. We certainly think this is a good idea, and we could permit something to work in this location. We have an example of one near here on Oak Valley Drive. Oak Valley Drive at Boulder Ridge. We have a crossing on the north leg of the intersection. You can see the arrow there where you've got pedestrian facilities on both sides. Go ahead with the next picture. And this is a picture of what's out there today. You have the pedestrian signage. If you're familiar with this area, below the sign and above the arrow is what's called a rapid flashing beacon, where a pedestrian will come up to the crosswalk, activate the beacon, and it will notify drivers underneath the sign. And then also we have the overhead mast arm. That's the black mast arm with the crosswalk sign hanging from it, and it's illuminated with a light as well. In this case, they do show, we do have a pedestrian island there for the left turn, but that's because this location doesn't have a four-way intersection. That island does present a problem with left turn movements for both the subdivision entrances. So likely in the case of Ann Arbor-Saline, we will not have that refuge island, but we'd have signs on both sides of the road, the mast arm overhead, and the rapid flashing beacons is a typical practice we've worked with Pittsfield Township with to get this to ultimately result in a project. And we would work with the township in the case of Ann Arbor-Saline Road at the Bella Vista community. With that, I think that's all I had. Wanted to keep this fairly brief so that we can address questions and concerns, and just I'll turn it back over to Tiffany in the township.
Thank you, Matt. Before we begin taking questions, we'll unmute, Dr. Mandy Gruhl, the supervisor for Pittsfield Township, to hear remarks. Go ahead, supervisor.
Thank you. I agree with Matt. We're going to keep this short because we're really here to address your questions and concerns. We just want to make sure that we're committed to ensuring that not only do we make land use decisions, as was mentioned in the beginning, to ensure that we're welcoming people into our community, but once you're here, we want to make sure that this is your slice of heaven is how I like to say it, that you feel safe, you feel like this is really where you all belong. So we will work with you to the extent possible to make sure that we do this in this particular case as well, as we've done it from multiple times around. And I think the crosswalk is going to be a big step forward in ensuring that a lot of your concerns and questions are met, because over the last 15 years, I've seen sort of traffic movements in the non-motorized amenities like crosswalks. I happen to live right off of Textile Road, and it used to be a 55 plus. And since we've put in the crosswalks and pet amenities, traffic will slow down just because there is that pedestrian and non-motorized movement happening. So I feel that's going to be a huge movement. And of course, with prohibiting the jake braking as well, we did make the requisite changes in our ordinance a few years ago, and then due to the pandemic, the actual placement of the signages kind of got delayed. So we'll make sure that that gets turned around very, very quickly for you. Between those two sort of solutions, I'm hoping that we can move forward in a better direction. But once again, we're here to take your questions and hear your concerns. So let's take it away. We'll turn it back to you. I'll turn it to you, Tiffany, for now.
Thank you, Supervisor. Sir, if you are viewing this meeting on your computer, first make sure to click Join Audio. You can then raise your hand by clicking the Participants or Reactions button at the bottom of your screen, and then the Raise Hand button on the bottom of your screen. If you dialed into the meeting from your touchtone phone, raise your hand by dialing *9. As the meeting host, I will unmute participants with raised hands one at a time. I will announce your username or last 4 digits of your phone number when it is your turn to speak. We are happy to answer as many questions as possible, but please be respectful of each other's time. If your question is answered before you are called on, you can lower your hand by clicking the lower hand button or dialing *9. Remember, this meeting will last about an hour, so that is 1 o'clock. I will try to get to as many questions as possible. I'll take my first question from Bonnie Wang. I'll ask you to unmute.
Hi,
Bonnie.
thank you.
Okay, go ahead. Yes, okay.
Thank you so much for holding this town hall for our neighborhood and being responsive to our letters and concerns. I do have a question, about the timing. So what is the timing that you think the engine brake signs will be up? And what is the timing of construction of the crosswalk?
So in terms of the signage, probably sometime this fall, we'll be able to get those signs up. We just have to fill out an application with the Washington County Road Commission, get the sign locations approved. I believe there's signs already pre-made that we can purchase from the Road Commission and have them installed. We just have to get the permit for the locations. In terms of the intersection crosswalk, there's some design work that needs to be done. Director McDonnell and I talked a little bit in a previous meeting. We would start working on that in short order and start looking to have that potentially worked on in 2024. The biggest thing is to make sure that from an engineering standpoint and a safety standpoint, all the bells and whistles are checked before we go to design and construction. So if this is something that we're going to be working toward, we'll begin tomorrow and start putting together what's necessary to get the project rolling with an anticipation that we would have something ready to go to bid out next year in 2024.
And please understand that this non-motorized project is sort of really something that had been planned by the township, which is why we ensured that there was the sidewalk gap filling occurred on both the east and west sides of the corridor. So there was especially along Tiger Lily on that side of the road on the west side, there was some sidewalk gap filling. So we ensured that that was all taken care of during the initial construction phase, which is typically what takes a long time when you're doing these non-motorized projects, because with sidewalks and pathways, you have to get easements and those sort of things. Now that the subdivision is built out, we have good traffic counts. I think that's going to be a big piece of it, and the road commission probably wants to speak to that piece of it. And then they'll have to do the design work for the ped crossing, the mid-block crossing, and then the design and construct and all of that can sometimes be a little lengthy, but I know, as Director Best mentioned, we will make sure that we're working, and the road commission has been a wonderful partner with the township, and we're suspecting it's going to be a similar situation where we work quite seamlessly together, that once we have the traffic study report data back, both for the speed limit and for this ped crossing, that will move in a fairly swift manner. I don't know if Mr. McDonald has something he wanted to add with regard to the timeline of the crosswalk.
I think realistically, 2024 construction season makes sense. Some of the elements of other crossings, like the mast arms, do take a long time to fabricate those steels. It's one of the lead times that our industry is seeing for mast arms can be anywhere from 8 to 12 months. So we may be able to engineer and find appropriate locations, make sure there's no utility conflicts, and get the sidewalk and signs up, but then the mast arms may come at a later point in time.
Okay. I actually have a question in the chat. Are there any plans to install a roundabout at the Ann Arbor-Saline Maple intersection? The current traffic light may be causing more noise from stopping and starting trucks and vehicle traffic. Any feedback on this topic?
We do not have any current plans for a roundabout that intersection. All of our intersections, we are always monitoring and seeing if there are any issues from a safety perspective, from a congestion perspective, but there are no plans for a roundabout at that intersection currently.
Thank you. Ryan Lowry, I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Excellent. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Great. First off, this is a wonderful presentation. Dr. Growall, Matt, Director Best, thank you so much. I'm pretty excited about what we're learning today. I think my question is more around, is there anything our communities, I'm thinking the Hawthorne Ridge neighborhood too, who would enjoy this benefit, can do to help either with the Board of Trustees from, engagement through like direct contact, or it really does sound like from an appropriations perspective, this project sounds like it's already greenlit, but can you just help us a little bit in terms of how we can be helpful to making sure that we meet that 2024 construction season that we're talking about?
Great question. Thank you for that, because I believe that we improve our community in partnership. So what we do here at the township is reflective of the concerns, needs, desires of our residents. So I think it's very important that we continually remain engaged with you. Like I mentioned, we've sort of prepped this for a non-motorized and ped movement initially, which is why we did the gap filling on your side of the neighborhood as well, to make sure it's an inclusive process and not just for the new people, because it's our community as a whole. With regard to that piece of it, the township has traditionally the township board, I should say, has had a great track record of being very supportive of these sort of projects. Again, like I mentioned, because we've, especially over the last decade or so, we've seen so many results and positive results from doing this in our community, creating a sense of place, engagement, all of those sort of things. So my hope and desire is that it will be a similar process here on out, but just so you know, whenever I take these requests to the board for consideration and review, I'll make sure that each one of your homeowner associations is made aware of the timeline and the process, because I do think it's very important for the board to hear directly from you, and whether that's by way of a letter, emails, showing up at the board meeting, I leave that up to you in your neighborhood and residents, but I do feel it's really important for us to establish sort of that sort of documentation of the fact that this request, whether it's for an appropriation or for a design or whatever the request might be, that it is coming as a result of a series of processes that include public engagement, most specifically the residents that it involves. So yes, we will definitely be keeping that in mind and keeping you engaged, just so also like, where is this project, what's happening, like, so it doesn't kind of just fall off. You might see the signs for the jake breaking go up this fall, but then it's like, what's happening with the mid-block crossing project. So we'll make sure we keep you in the loop of things, and then definitely when it's going to the board for formal review and approval, we'll make sure we keep you in the process as well.
Thank you. I'll ask Marcy to unmute.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me well?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you. Again, thank you again for our elected representatives engaging with us in this way. That's really super important to me. I just wanted to add one other item. I noticed, kind of the information that came from us at the Bella Vista development was really around pedestrian safety, speed, and the sound of the trucks. And I would like to add one other consideration to kind of put on your radar is that Maple Road, Ann Arbor-Saline intersection, people coming off of Maple Road, making the right onto Ann Arbor-Saline to go eastbound into town or northbound, whatever that is there, because it's kind of on an angle. Because there is no turn on, there is no turn on red sign there. That is a constant stream of traffic, even when that is a red light on Maple Road coming on to Ann Arbor-Saline. And that creates very small gaps between cars. And the other piece I would say about that Maple Road, Ann Arbor-Saline intersection, it is not a 90-degree intersection to the left towards Saline. It's like 120 plus. So it's actually almost like a blind corner for anybody to make a right on red onto Ann Arbor-Saline. It almost seems dangerous. And I was wondering if there's any consideration of maybe putting a no turn on red at that intersection, or a no turn on red that has a time restriction around primary commuting times. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. I'm not aware of any consideration for the no turn on red, but certainly we will follow up and look at that, as we have a few of those locations where we prohibit. Mainly it's related to if we have safety issues that we see or perceive, that we will restrict that movement. So appreciate your comments. We will review it and evaluate. So thank you.
Thank you. I will ask Alan to unmute.
Okay. My primary concern is my wife has a unit that is right on Ann Arbor-Saline Road. And the noise, literally 24 hours a day, is extremely loud. And it's impacting her ability to sleep. I mean, all night, these trucks are bouncing on that. And I see two possibilities that might help the situation. Number one, there are several bumps on that stretch of road. And these big trucks hit these things. And instead of just the truck noise, there's boom, boom, boom at all times, which makes sleep rather difficult. So smoothing or repaving that entire section would assist that, so that it was a smooth road, there were no bumps in the road. And number two, the other thing, and this would probably be the ultimate solution, is to put in some sort of a time frame that says, like, between 9 p.m. and 6 a.m. or something of this, that the big trucks cannot use that section of road. Okay. So, but again, to me, all the safety issues are interesting and probably beneficial, but noise is the number one issue from my perspective, and is having a severe effect on my wife and her ability to sleep. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any more questions or comments? Okay. I don't, oh, one, I just got one in the chat. I just received a question in the chat. Can you elaborate on how the township will enforce the signage stating no engine brakes?
I believe Director Harshberger is on this call as well. I'm not sure if you can loop him in, but as I mentioned in my comments, that we will make sure, he and I were just talking yesterday about this meeting, and he already has it on his list of to-dos, and Director Best and Director Harshberger, of course, have, they always work on these projects jointly and together. So we'll make sure that once the signs are up, Director Harshberger and his team is made aware of the same, so he can send his crew there to make sure that they're patrolling and monitoring and making sure that all the truck drivers know about this new rule, and then we'll start enforcing, obviously, very stringently from there on out.
Thank you. David White, I will ask you to unmute.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So I sent a chat note in, but I live on the corner, or we live on the corner of Ann Arbor-Saline and Bella Strata, and have lived here about 2 years. So I can tell you from familiarity with trucks that engine braking is not the issue. It is while they're accelerating through Maple, that intersection, or if they have to stop at the light at Maple and then come on down, that these trucks, these are dual tandem or tandem trailer gravel trucks. The tractors that they use for these gravel haulers are hot rodded. They've got more horsepower, and they've got fewer sound muffling for the engine. And so the noise that everybody is attributing to engine braking, that's not the problem. It's just the overall noise that these trucks make. And they will, but cars where we live, you can barely hear them. Or, all of us have pretty nice double insulated windows. So the traffic per se is not an issue, but these big trucks are an issue. And there's one a minute, probably average, that goes by. So you can figure out how many trucks we're talking about. So I waited to raise my hand here, but putting up a sign that just says no engine braking isn't really going to help, because that's about 5% of the problem. The problem is, if you walk on the walking trail next to Ann Arbor-Saline and you have an iWatch or something, your watch is going to go off every time one of these trucks goes by saying unhealthy noise. We have to cover our ears when we're out walking on that trail. The decibel level is so high, and it's just the typical decibel level of these gravel hauling trucks is way beyond a standard 18-wheeler up on I-94, for instance. So just want you to understand that the noise problem is not engine braking, it's not Jake braking, it's the sound of these hot rodded engines for all these gravel haulers. They're illegal. If the police were out here, and I know they have much, more important things to do, but if a noise study were done, maybe you could do this, you would see that these trucks need to be issued tickets and say you need to come into compliance with the noise regulations, and that would solve a whole lot of this problem. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you, David. I
You
have a
bet.
question. I have a question in the chat. Could Matt clarify when the TCO study would begin and how we can receive updates on the study?
So typically, we'll get a request from the township, and under the law, ultimately, we need to work with the Michigan State Police on the study. This takes a long time, unfortunately. Michigan State Police has a wide variety of tasks they're assigned to, and we've seen speed studies requests go over a year. So I just want to keep it realistic and understand that this is somewhat out of our control from the standpoint of resources for the Michigan State Police and how quickly they can respond to requests on speed studies. But the township and the road commission certainly can work together to begin that process. And just want to make folks aware that this is not going to happen very quickly.
Thank you. I have another question in the chat. Will the crosswalk and accidents as well as noise issues be considered when determining the best speed limit?
As I indicated, the speed studies performed by Michigan State Police. Certainly, when you're adding features such as a crosswalk, as Supervisor has noted early in her remarks, is sometimes over time, driver behavior may change on a route based on things being added, and it may change driver behavior. So ultimately, over time, those things may have an influence on speed, but ultimately that is borne out over time as we look at and evaluate the speed limits that are, or the speed that drivers are going on the roadway.
Thank you. Another question. Is it frightening? I'm sorry, my apologies. It is frightening sitting in the narrow left turn lane into the Bella Vista neighborhood as trucks and cars speed by on each side. None of the ideas today have addressed this safety issue. Please comment.
For those that are not aware, we certainly follow nationally adopted standards when we're looking at lane size. And I believe we have appropriate lane size and width out there. This is a busy primary roadway. Again, and the truck traffic has always been there. It does uptick during the summer months and during the construction season when these gravel products are needed for infrastructure, and then ultimately as the winter months go on, you'll see a drop in those gravel haulers. But this is a primary roadway with a fair amount of traffic. Again, a designated truck route and a permitted haul route for those gravel pits.
Thank you. Someone in the chat just told me some people are having an issue with raising their hand. I can go over just a few things really quick. If you dialed into the meeting with your touch tone phone or raise your hand, *9 is how you would do that. I'll ask you to unmute at that point. So the raise your hand button is at the bottom of your screen there. So that's how you would do that. I'll take another question here. The next question is, what will the expectation of motorists be when they encounter the crosswalk? That's one question. Is it mandated that you stop to allow pedestrians to cross, such as in Ann Arbor? Also, is there any concern that trucks won't be able to stop, especially in a 55-mile-per-hour speed area? And is a sound wall possible? There's several questions on that one. I can take our time with that.
Okay. I will ask our Assistant Director of Engineering, Brent Schlack, in on the conversation as a matter of law and how drivers are to behave with the signage and the devices. Brent, you want to speak to that?
Sure, I can. Thank you, Matt. As far as the crosswalk, the county or the townships don't have a similar, I believe that's under an ordinance through the city, but we follow state law. So if there's a pedestrian within the crosswalk, then then a vehicle has to stop. But somebody walking down the road or standing at the edge of the road waiting to cross, the vehicle does not have to stop. The crossing will be with the rapid flashing beacons, and those are warning devices that a pedestrian is present. And we'll have signs there that indicate that vehicles do not have to stop unless they're within the crosswalk.
She also asked, is there a sound wall possible?
So typically, the road commission has not gotten into sound walls. Typically, those are seen on the interstate system, where you see that sound wall, but the Washington County Road Commission does not have any sound walls or any means to shield that noise from our primary road network.
Okay, I do have a question. Malini, I believe if I'm not pronouncing that right, my apologies, but I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you for arranging the meeting. It has been informative. And I think my neighbors have done a good job of covering a lot of the questions. I think David explained, I'm on the other side of Bella Vista from David, and we both kind of experience similar noise because you have trucks accelerating as they come, and they kind of come down from both sides, both Maple and Oak Valley, and they come to the depression and then they start accelerating right about the intersection. So the noise level is not coming from jake braking, just like David explained. And just like Alan said, the traffic noise, the truck noise is all through the day. 5:36, we have been woken up in the morning with the truck noise. So my question is, can you do something about restricting, first of all, the kinds of trucks? Can you reduce the weight? Can you remove the trailer? That would help. And can you do something as far as limiting the number of hours in which they go? So we can say, okay, we're going to wear earplugs or whatever for those many hours. And as a trained audiologist, I can also tell you this is not, I mean, from what I know, this is not permissible noise levels for a community. So the noise levels within the house sometimes are around 70, 75 from outside. These, as the trucks go in, I have actually sat and measured these noise levels. They are disruptive for conversations. They're disruptive for sleep. I think we need to do something more about the truck traffic. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I also have another question. What is the speed limit on Ann Arbor-Saline? There's no posted sign coming from Saline towards Ann Arbor until past the intersection we've been discussing.
So again, just to review, the segment between Wagner and Oak Valley, it is unposted. So there won't be a speed limit sign, and anywhere where we're unposted, ultimately it's prima facie with a maximum of 55 miles an hour. So the traffic control order from Wagner to Oak Valley does not have a speed limit designated, so it's prima facie unposted up to 55 miles an hour. In some instances, we might have signage that says, for instance, there is a speed limit between Oak Valley and I-94 where the speed limit sign is 45 miles an hour. Sometimes we'll put 45 ends as you're traveling south or westbound on Ann Arbor-Saline so that folks know it's now unposted. So that was something we were considering for this segment so that it's a little more defined.
Thank you. I got a question for one comment. Says, can Director Harshberger comment on David White's point about the truck noise and how to hold trucks accountable? Oh, I'm going to unmute you.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Good afternoon, everybody. Unfortunately, I kind of agree with the point that it's not jake braking that we see predominantly, probably more acceleration. So what was the other part of the question that was asked?
How do we hold trucks accountable?
That's a good question. We don't have the, I guess, ability to measure noise for engine traffic, for truck traffic engines. We'd have to get a hold of the Michigan State Police Motor Carrier Division to check into that, and I can respond and report out afterwards.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? Okay, I'll go to Chuck Marshall. I'm going to ask you to unmute. Go ahead, Chuck. We can't hear you. Okay, hold on. I ask you to unmute. Go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
We hear you now.
Okay, great, thanks. I just wanted to put a third voice behind David's related to the truck noise. I'm curious, it sounds like a study from the state police regarding truck noise would be problematic as far as getting that done in a timely manner. Is there a way for the township, and I guess this is where jurisdictions come into play, can the township look at ordinances related to enforcement of a particular decibel level and then have that enforced by local, either Pittsfield Police or Ann Arbor Police?
That's an interesting question. That there is already an established noise ordinance in the township that sets up the jurisdictional ability of this. There's also state law that deals with motorized traffic, and the township really doesn't have jurisdiction over motorized traffic. That's why the state police is the appropriate party, as Director Harshberger said. However, we can look at what other options there are and report back along with Director Harshberger. I don't think, to be honest, I don't think there's anything that the township can do with motor vehicle traffic, because I believe state law supersedes motor vehicle noise ordinances on motor traffic. So, but it is definitely something we can double check on for you.
And just to add to that, I was going to say the same thing, that it really comes back to the Michigan State Police Motor Carrier doing commercial vehicle traffic enforcement, and they pretty much are the ones who are responsible for enforcement of that state law. Local ordinances, we don't have anything that would apply that would supersede what the state police are able to do under state law. And we don't have the equipment to measure engine noise. I'm be quite honest with you, I'm not sure what they do for that. But I will find out, as Matt Best had indicated, and let everybody know.
I have a question in the chat. Could a different traffic light timing Ann Arbor-Saline from having to stop very much at the intersection with Maple be beneficial? The noise from acceleration does seem to be the bulk of the issue.
Thank you, Brent. I was just gonna ask.
So I can take that. I think I got it. Tiffany, I apologize. You were kind of broke up.
Okay, sorry about that.
But what I understood the question, tell me if I'm wrong, is that can the timing of the traffic signal at Ann Arbor-Saline and Maple be modified to allow for more free flow, I guess, through the intersection to eliminate stopping of some of those vehicles? We can certainly look at that. A lot of our system is timed based on demand. So we have vehicle detectors at the intersection, and so whenever a vehicle is present, it will go to that leg of the intersection. It so, and of course it times out. We put a certain time in there to allow it to based on the number of vehicles, and then to terminate to yellow and all red. So, but yeah, we can certainly look at the timing and see if we can improve some of that. Maybe even look at what we're seeing through our vehicle detectors to adjust. So, so yeah, we can definitely take a look.
Thank you. I have another question. Is it possible to reroute the truck route from Ann Arbor-Saline to Zeeb? Zeeb is a more direct route to I-94 than Ann Arbor-Saline. I understand Ann Arbor-Saline Road has been a truck route since the 80s, but maybe it's time for a change since it is more populated now than it was in the 80s.
Yeah, as I talked about, thank you for acknowledging the haul route was there. And the investment really has occurred on Ann Arbor-Saline Road and Pleasant Lake Road to support that heavy loading truck traffic. So I don't know that that alternative route for Zeeb Road would be a desirable route to go. But that's something we may need to consider in the future. But ultimately, right now, the permitted route is Pleasant Lake to Ann Arbor-Saline to I-94.
Thank you. I got a comment as a follow-up. Would it make sense for our community to write or call state police on the noise issue?
Well, anytime a community contacts the state police, they are going to give it some merit and look at it. However, as Director Harshberger will tell you, it's the data and the collection of the noise data and how they enforce the motor from the motor carrier division, the noise issues from trucks. That is really the defining piece of how that motor noise is enforced. It doesn't hurt to contact, but I'll defer the rest of my time to Director Harshberger.
No, I only concur with Director Best's comments. They're going to use the data, to be quite honest with you, when they make those decisions and what they're able to do under the state law. So I don't disagree that, attempting to contact to at least express your concerns with the things that we have talked about today and the issue of noise and truck routes and whatnot. It can't hurt, but I think at the end of the day, they use the data to make determinations as to what needs to be done for enforcement or any changes in truck routes.
Thank you. This question is for Director Best. Please provide details on the township noise ordinance. How does the township monitor noise and hold folks accountable?
So the township's ordinance is online, and you can go to the township website, and right at the top, there's a drop-down menu. If you go all the way to the right-hand side on the screen, you'll see township ordinance. You can type in the word noise, and you can read it yourself. But in a very brief synopsis, the township's noise ordinance handles noise as part of nuisance. And there's different sections of noise, but there is noise from residences, noise from businesses, noise from commercial industrial properties. And then there are, it is set to the code enforcement officer and some set to public safety. So our code enforcement officer goes out and makes a determination whether noise is nuisance. And they have I can't think of the word right now. They have devices that measure how many decibels there are. And they can check, pardon? Odometers? Okay. Odometers. And they check for nuisance noise, and then they make a determination. Our public safety also has the ability to do that. And I won't comment on how they do that. Director Harshberger can if he wants. But one thing that it does exclude, like I said, is motor vehicle traffic is excluded in our ordinance. And there are also some other exclusions from it, but we enforce the noise ordinance based on nuisance call. So if you contact the township and say, we have this noise, that noise, our code enforcement officer goes and investigates and determines whether there's a nuisance noise or not. Same holds true if it's public safety. So I think
no, that's it. Yeah.
Okay, well, Thank you to everyone today. We are at about 12:55. Here's the contact information for Matt McDonald and Matt Best on your screen. We want to pass along that Pittsfield Township is offering to host an in-person meeting. If there are requests for more questions to be answered, contact Matt Best for that. And then we want to tell you also, thank you for attending the meeting, this virtual meeting with WCRC and Pittsfield Township. We appreciate all your questions and your feedback, and we wish you the best today and have a great afternoon.
Thank you, Tiffany, and thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.